Hello, and welcome to my channel. I'm Margaret, and here I share real-life stories from my friends at the nursing home. You? Learn to code? At your age? He laughed, but I knew something he didn't. I still had time and patience. It was the kind of laugh that stings more than a slap. Not loud or theatrical, just quiet, confident, dismissive. Like I was a child trying to fly with cardboard wings. My son didn't even look up from his phone when he said it, barely suppressing the smirk that curved at the corner of his mouth. It was mid-January, the windows in the kitchen rattling with the howling Ontario wind. I'd spent the whole afternoon working through a free online course on HTML, hunched over the old laptop he gave me 5 years ago. The trackpad sticks. The charger needs tape to stay in. But it worked, and I was proud. I'd just built my first little page, a button that turned blue when you clicked it. My heart had fluttered like I'd built a rocket. I just wanted to share that with my only son. Instead, I got laughed at. My name is Meera Sharma. I'm 55 years old, widow, mother. Once a secretary for a medical office that shut down during COVID. Since then, I've lived quietly in our small town, a dot on the map outside Mississauga. I live in the same two-bedroom cottage my husband Arjun and I bought 25 years ago. Paint chipping, stairs creaking, but it's home. It smells of cinnamon and old books and memories I'm not ready to part with. My husband passed from a heart attack in 2018. Sudden. One moment we were watching reruns of Jeopardy, and the next, he was gone. Kabir, our son, was 22 at the time. Bright, sharp, sarcastic. He works for a startup in Toronto, building apps and optimizing things I don't understand. He talks fast and wears expensive sneakers. I love him fiercely, even when he wounds me with his words. After the medical office closed, I spent the first year in a haze. Every morning I still brewed tea at 6:45, the way I did for work. I'd sit by the window, watching nothing in particular, hands wrapped around the mug like it might anchor me. No one called, no one needed me. Days slipped by like steam. I tried hobbies, gardening, too hard on my knees, baking. I gained 10 pounds. Netflix numbed me more than helped. I wasn't built for idleness. I needed to use my mind again, even if no one else saw the use in me. One night, bored and scrolling, I stumbled on a YouTube video. HTML for absolute beginners. Build your first web page. The man in the video had a kind face and a slow, patient voice. He explained things clearly. I liked that. I stayed up until 2 a.m., typing along with his tutorial. The next day, I did another, then another. No one knew. I didn't want Kabir to scoff. He already treated me like I was a relic. "Ma, just sell the cottage," he'd say. "You can move into a condo, easier maintenance, I'll help." But I didn't want a condo. I wanted to hold on to something that was mine. This house held my life, and maybe, just maybe, my future too. Still, he kept pressing. I think he wanted the money, or maybe he wanted to get rid of the burden of me. I couldn't be sure anymore. Every time he visited, which wasn't often, he'd walk around the cottage like a real estate agent sizing up the square footage. "I could get you a good price, Ma. Market's hot. You're not exactly using the upstairs anyway." I'd nod, stir the tea, change the subject. But the hardest thing wasn't his pushiness. It was the disrespect. Every time I mentioned something technical, his brow would furrow like I was speaking gibberish. "You don't really need to learn that stuff," he said once, waving a hand. "That's for kids who grew up online. It's too late for you." Too late. What a cruel phrase. As if a woman over 50 becomes invisible. As if the clocks wind down the moment her last paycheck is cashed or her husband's chair goes empty. But I knew something he didn't. I had time and patience, and more importantly, nothing to lose. So I studied. Every night after dinner, I'd light the candle on the side table, put on my reading glasses, and open the laptop. JavaScript frustrated me to tears. CSS confused me, but I kept at it. Sometimes I'd cry in the dark, not from failure, but from joy, from feeling my brain stretch again, from the quiet thrill of conquering something new. Once, I joined a Reddit forum for beginner coders. I didn't say my age, just asked questions. They helped, kindly. An anonymous stranger called CyberGranny98 even offered to proofread my little project. Meanwhile, Kabir kept dropping in with his smug advice. You should just relax, Ma. Enjoy things, go on a cruise. I didn't want a cruise. I wanted a purpose. Then came the breaking point. One weekend in April, he brought over some papers. This is just for estate planning, he said casually. If you sign over the house, we can put it in a trust. Avoid probate later. It's smart. But the tone, the phrasing, the way he didn't meet my eyes. I wasn't stupid. This wasn't for my benefit. It was for his. I could see it plain as the rain streaking down the window. I didn't sign. He sulked for the rest of the visit, left early. That night, I sat with the contract in my lap. The walls of the cottage seemed to breathe around me. I touched the dining table where Arjun once carved a tiny A+M into the wood with a fork tip. I remembered Kabir's 5th birthday party, balloons taped to the ceiling beams. The storm of tears I cried on the kitchen floor the day I got laid off. And I decided something. I wouldn't beg for dignity. I'd build it. The days after Kabir left with those papers were strangely electric. Something had shifted. Not in him. He kept sending passive-aggressive texts like, "Just think about it, Ma. It's a good move." But in me, I was tired of being quietly dismissed. Tired of second-guessing myself because my wrinkles outnumbered my LinkedIn endorsements. I wasn't dead. I was just middle-aged and underestimated. A dangerous combination, if you ask me. I stopped replying to Kabir's messages for a week. I didn't explain. I just disappeared from his radar. Let him stew. Instead, I poured myself into the strange little world of coding. I started dreaming in functions and variables. Every night after dishes were done, I'd climb into my corner chair by the heater, open my battered old laptop, and work. My first goal was simple. Build something useful. Something real. I kept thinking about my neighbours, Mrs. Anderson across the street, who still writes checks and gets flustered at the self-checkout, or old Mr. Patel, who always forgets which day the gas bill is due. They weren't dumb. They just weren't born into this digital jungle. No app spoke to them. It was all teenage slang and endless pop-ups. Tiny fonts and complicated sign-ins. Everything assumed you were 25, caffeinated, and fluent in tech. And that gave me an idea. What if I built a simple budgeting app? Not flashy, not complex. Just clean, readable, made for people over 50 who want to track their money without feeling stupid. I didn't tell anyone. Not even my best friend Hema, who lives 2 blocks down and still swears WhatsApp is too nosy. I worked in silence. I read up on accessibility design, learned how to use color contrast for weak eyes, made all the buttons big and labeled them in plain English. I even added a voice mode. It wasn't perfect, but you could speak your expenses and it would log them. The app was called Safe Nest, because that's what it was meant to protect, someone's nest egg, their peace. Every time I finished a feature, I'd walk around the house with my arms in the air like I'd won a marathon. No one cheered, no one saw. But I felt alive. Meanwhile, Kabir kept circling back. "You haven't signed the forms yet." "No, I haven't." Why not? Because this is my home. He snorted. Ma, it's falling apart. You can't even mow the backyard anymore. I'll plant wildflowers. He didn't laugh. He frowned, genuinely confused. Why are you being so stubborn? That's when I realized he truly didn't see me anymore. I wasn't a person in his eyes. I was a placeholder, an obstacle. Some delicate, clueless old woman, too, stuck in her ways to know what's good for her. And that's what hurt the most. Not that he wanted the house, but that he'd decided I didn't matter. I stopped inviting him over. He didn't notice. Instead, I took a bus to the senior centre every Wednesday. They had good Wi-Fi and strong tea. I'd sit in the corner by the radiator with my laptop and quietly build. Sometimes the other women would peek over my shoulder. What are you doing, Mira? Playing Sudoku? No, I'd smile, making an app. Their eyes would go wide. Then they'd laugh. Until I showed them. Then they stared. You did that? By yourself? I nodded. One day, I asked if anyone wanted to test it. I brought in 5 printed instruction sheets, and by the end of the week, 12 people had downloaded SafeNest. Feedback poured in. It's the first time I actually understand where my money goes. The voice part is so helpful. My arthritis makes typing hard. Can I tell my niece about this? She works at a community office. I kept refining the app, taking notes, tweaking things. I signed up for GitHub. I even learned how to submit the app to the Play Store. It was a slow wildfire. Nothing viral, nothing flashy. But it grew. And with every user, I grew a little taller. One day, I got an email from a young woman named Alana. She ran tech literacy programs at a community college nearby. She'd heard about SafeNest from one of her students, a retired factory worker who called it life-saving. I don't mean to pry, she wrote, but are you open to giving a small talk at our senior tech showcase in June? We love highlighting local creators. I stared at the screen for a long time. Me? A speaker? My hand trembled as I typed back. Yes, I'd be honored. June came quickly. The night before the talk, I stood in front of the mirror for almost an hour, practicing. I even wore lipstick, for the first time since Arjun's funeral. The event was modest, maybe 80 people, a mix of seniors and students, some volunteers. But when I walked up to the little podium and introduced myself, something in the room shifted. I spoke about feeling invisible, about learning in secret, about refusing to believe that age meant irrelevance. I demoed SafeNest. They clapped. Then, during the break, a group of college kids, young, bright, coding prodigies, came up to me. One of them grinned. Wait, you're Mira Sharma? The app with the no login voice entry and font resizer? You're kind of a legend in our dev forum. We analyzed your UX for a class. I blinked. I am? He nodded. You found a gap no one else saw. It's clean, accessible, smart. My prof said it was a masterclass in empathy-based design. I stood there, speechless, while they asked to take selfies. Selfies? With me. And then, a week later, I got a call. From Kabir. Hey, he said, too casually. So, one of my friends at work sent me this link. It's an article about you. My stomach twisted. Oh? You didn't tell me. You never asked. He was quiet. Then, slower. They're calling you the coding auntie of Ontario. You built a real app? Yes. He laughed, but not the same laugh. This one was smaller, uncertain, even a little awed. Can I see it? I almost said no, almost told him to figure it out like I did. But instead, I said, you can download it, like everyone else. The next day, he texted. It's actually really good, like actually impressive. I didn't reply. I just smiled. The morning after Kabir texted me about SafeNest, I stood outside on the porch, tea in hand, and watched the fog roll off the trees, like steam lifting off an old memory. The world felt different, not louder or brighter, but more solid, like I had finally stepped into my own skin after years of shrinking inside it. The days that followed brought a trickle of messages. First Kabir again, tentatively. Your UX decisions are really clever. I didn't think of that market. Then, one of my co-workers' moms uses your app. They didn't even know you made it. And finally, Ma, why didn't you tell me? I stared at that one for a while. How could I explain that silence had become my shield? That years of small cuts, ignored advice, belittling laughter, those condescending sighs, had taught me not to bother. I could still hear his voice from months ago, like a thorn caught under my skin. You learned to code at your age? So I didn't explain. I simply wrote. Because you didn't believe I could. That night, for the first time in months, he called instead of texting. Ma, he said softly, you're right. I didn't. And I'm sorry. The words caught me off guard. I wasn't expecting them. Not from him. I never thought it was about me, he went on. But I guess I made it that way. You weren't trying to prove anything. You were just trying to live. I swallowed hard. Silence stretched between us, thick and raw. You always used to believe I could do anything, he said. I still do, I replied, but I also believe I can. And in that moment, something shifted between us. Not perfectly, not all at once, but like a door creaking open after years of rust. The local newspaper ran a piece on me. A full-page spread with a picture of me at the senior centre, holding my laptop like a war medal. Local widow builds app to help seniors budget, earns praise from tech community. It was surreal. After the article, I started getting emails from other women, from widows, from people over 50 who had been told to sit quietly, to age gracefully, to stop trying. I've always wanted to learn coding, but felt embarrassed. You made me believe I can try. You reminded me that it's never too late to begin again. Thank you for making something for us. Everything else is made for people who forget we exist. I replied to every message. I started a blog, Late Bloomers Code. It was simple. One post a week. I shared what I learned, what I messed up, and how I fixed it. I didn't write like a techie. I wrote like a friend. And people responded. Soon, I was invited to teach a small class, coding for absolute beginners, 50 plus, at the senior centre. 10 people signed up, then 20. By the third month, we had a wait list. I watched the light return to their eyes. One woman cried after creating her first button that changed colour. Another man brought in a box of donuts every week just to say thank you. These were people like me, told for years that their best days were behind them. But now they were building, learning, laughing. When the invitation to speak at the Ontario Tech Futures Conference came in, I thought it was a scam. It wasn't. The keynote slot was offered to a speaker whose work challenges ageism in tech and highlights digital inclusion for overlooked communities. They meant me. Kabir offered to drive me. I'll book the hotel, get us a rental car, he said, like it was a given. I hesitated. He noticed. Ma, I want to be there. So I said yes. At the conference, the crowd was unlike anything I'd ever faced. Hundreds of people, bright lights, huge projectors. My hands shook as I stepped onto the stage. I wore a deep blue sari with silver trim, the same one I wore to Kabir's graduation. My name is Meera Sharma, I began, voice a little wobbly. I am 55 years old, and 3 years ago, I didn't know what a line of code looked like. There was a hush, then laughter, kind, curious. I told them everything, how I learned in silence, how my own son laughed, how I decided to build not for fame, but for need, how I saw a generation left behind and decided to make something that told them, you still matter. When I finished, the applause didn't stop. They stood up. I cried, unashamed. Afterward, Kabir found me backstage. His eyes were red. You were incredible, he whispered. Ma, you changed people's lives. I changed my own first, I said. The rest followed. In early autumn, Kabir brought the papers again, the ones I refused to sign back in April. Only this time they were different. Here, he said. It's a transfer of co-ownership from both of us back to you. I took my name off the deed. I stared at the signature line. Why? Because I wanted you to know. I see you now, and I'm proud of you. This house is yours, Ma. It always was. I just forgot that. I didn't cry. I signed it quietly and handed it back. You know, I said, I don't need revenge anymore. He looked puzzled. Because this peace, this life I built for myself, that's better than any payback. He nodded. But, I added with a small smile, I did enjoy watching your face when you realized I had more GitHub followers than you. He laughed. This time the laugh was warm, equal. These days, I still live in the cottage. I planted that wildflower garden in the back, the one Kabir said would never grow. It bloomed in full by June. Bees and butterflies love it. My app is now funded by a small tech grant. A few developers offered to help expand it, but I remain the project lead. The class at the senior center? Still going strong. We're building a website together now. One student's creating a recipe blog, another's making a genealogy tracker. Every Wednesday we laugh, we struggle, we learn. I'm not who I used to be. I'm more. And if you ask me the secret, it's not coding, not bravery. It's patience. It's knowing that quiet power lives inside the people no one expects to rise, and then rising anyway. So yes, my son once laughed when I said I wanted to learn coding. Now, he calls me boss lady in front of his friends. And I've finally stopped listening to people who laugh.